Hi everyone and welcome to my new series of videos. I'm James Sudworth and I'm a pro with PKR. Quite a few of you will already be regular players on here, and by regular I mean people who play more than once a week. You know, you don't have to be a professional, you don't have to be a multi-table grinder, grinding out 9 tables. All you've got to be is someone who enjoys poker and wants to make their game a little bit better. And the ways you can make your game a little bit better, I'm going to demonstrate over the next few videos. And I do recommend table selecting whenever you can, just because you don't want to be playing against a table full of sharks. You want to have the best possibility of winning money, even if you're playing for fun. So we'll join this here.
Welcome to the table.
Now we sit down, and the first thing is you always want to auto-post blinds. It's going to ask you before it gets to your blinds whether you want to post out a position, which you never want to do. You always want to wait to your blinds, otherwise you're just giving away 50 cents, which you're never going to get back. So once this is done, we're going to get on with the session. I'm going to go through the session. I'm going to take a 2-hour session and cut down the hands for you so you don't get all the nonsense hands where nothing happens. Hopefully we can get a good little session out of this, and I'll show you what I play and how it's best to transfer from 10 max, you know, from full ring to 6 max if you wanted, or perhaps you're a tournament player and you just want to start playing cash. I'll show you how to do that in this session, and hopefully we can make you a better player, and hopefully you can enjoy this. So one thing I didn't mention before is your auto top up. Now your auto top up function is a new thing to PKR. It's great. It means you can you don't have to rely on yourself to notice when you go under 100 big blinds. And I always say you have to play with 100 big blinds. It's just the most profitable way to play. So all you got to do is set your auto top up system, which is in the same little pop out window as your normal auto post blinds and sit out. That sort of window, and you can top up your you can set your top up so that every time you go below 100 big blinds, it re-tops up to 100 big blinds. And I really recommend that. It's great for multi-tabling, just so you don't have to worry about noticing these things. Now, for those of you that are transferring from tournaments to cash games, I could really recommend that you read a few books on the transfer. There's loads of strategy articles out there, and I've written quite a few myself. Basically, you're going to be playing a lot deeper more of the time than in tournaments. In tournaments, usually when you get to the later stages of a tournament, you're going to be all in or folding, and you know there's very little post-flop play to be done. In cash games, you're always deep. You're 100 big blinds deep all the time. So there's a lot more post-flop play and ownage. You know, you're going to be floating people on the flop, and you're going to be raising people. You're making moves on people which you wouldn't do, or you wouldn't have to face in a tournament. So it's not quite as straightforward as a tournament is, and you just got to learn this from experience. If you're coming over from a full ring game, 10-person game to a 6 max game, you're playing 40% of. Sorry, you should be playing 40% more hands than you do in the full ring game, purely because your blinds come around every 6 hands rather than in a full ring where they come around every 10. So if you stay at the same sort of range as you do with full ring, playing really tight or waiting for hands, you're just going to blind out, which is never great. One thing you should be doing when you're playing for the first time in a cash table is play a proven way of playing, which is TAG. This stands for tight aggressive, and a lot of you will already know what I'm talking about. But for those who don't, it basically means you select your hand ranges a lot more than if you're playing loose. And then when you do have hands that you want to play, you play them aggressively. Being more selective doesn't mean that you just select the top 20% of your range rather than top 15% of your range. So you don't just include ace jack as well as ace queen and ace king for your raising hands. It means you balance your range a lot more. It means you play the same sort of hands, your premium hands, so ace king, ace queen suited, queens, kings, aces, jacks, things like that. But you also add things like 7-8 suited, 6-7 suited, low pocket pairs, you know, things like that. Not mediocre hands that are going to get you in trouble with implied odds, reverse implied odds, things like ace jack, king 10, where you're going to lose a big pot or win a small pot. So another thing I'm going to talk about very quickly is the sort of hands that you want to be playing out of position. Out of position is a lot harder to play if you're under the gun, or under the gun +1, so you really want to be playing only your premium hands. Once you get the hang of playing 6 max, you can start to vary this up, and you can throw in some suited connectors and things like that. But don't start raising up with ace 9 and ace 6 just because it's suited. It's just going to get you in a lot of trouble, more than anything. Tag is a great way to play to start out at poker in cash games. You can play really loose in tournaments because you're only going to lose one buy-in. But in cash game, it's very, very easy to get out of control. And if you suffer from a little bit of tilt, then that can be a horrible little effect on you as well. Now, on this table 1 here, which is the top left table, we have a situation here where, I'm going to pause it for a moment, your opponent's raised pre-flop and you called with your ace-3 suited in the big blind, which is fairly standard. You've got to be defending things like that, and it plays well post-flop as well. This flop looks horrible for you, but the one thing you've got to look at is, as a tag, as tight aggressive, is spots to just barrel in, and by barreling I mean bluffing. Now here he's checked back the flop, and it's very unlikely he's going to check back the flop with something like ace-queen, ace-king, ace-jack, 10-jack, anything that's hit really. So all of his pairs are out of his range, except things like 8s or 9s or 10s, where he might check back just to keep the pot small. Everything else is going to bet. So when he checks back the flop, and then the turn comes a queen, you figure he hasn't got a jack, and any of your 8s and 9s is now going to be scared of a queen. So this is a really good spot to bluff. If he has the queen and you check back ace-queen, then, you know, so-so, and we can just make notes about that afterwards. But a lot of the time, they're not going to check back overcards when they're going to c-bet the flop, which is a continuation bet. So here, we're just going to bet out here. It's a nice standard 2/3 pot bet. And we're going to expect him to call a lot with things like ace-10 or maybe the mid-pocket pairs like 8s or 9s that he could have there. But we really don't put him on a queen, so we can just take it away from him then and there. Those are the sorts of spots you want to be looking at. You don't want to be just bluffing for the hell of it. You need to pick the spots wisely. And so to do that, you need to work out a hand range, put them on a hand range, and once you've done that, you can then work out how to play them best. If you know they don't have a queen or a jack in that situation, then you can obviously double barrel them, and they're going to be folding a lot of the time, which is really profitable. Which saves you just checking and then allowing them to bluff you off your ace high on the turn, which you can't continue without a position. I think I should quickly go over, for those of you who aren't up with poker terminology, what position means and what we call each position. Now, under the gun is basically the seat that is to the left of the big blind, and that's the worst position to be on at the table. Then you get under the gun +1, or at a 6-max table, that's also called the hijack. Then you get the cutoff, which is one place to the right of the button. Then you get the button, and then the small blind and big blind, which is very standard. These are just good to learn so that you know what I'm talking about when I talk about hands and positions. And obviously, when you're under the gun, you should be playing a very, very tight range of hands, purely because you're being out of position against most of the players who want to see a flop with you. Now on table 2 here, which is the top right table, we're going to have an interesting hand. Pre-flop, it's just a very standard call to set mine out of the big blind with pocket 3s. And I was just planning on giving up to Anomalisia's c-bet. But it turns out she doesn't c-bet. Now this is very strange, seeing as she's in position of both players, and she raised pre-flop. You would have assumed that would be a fantastic flop for her to bet at, because it's unlikely I have an ace, and Casiola could have an ace, but Anomalisia is going to find out whether Casiola is going to have an ace by c-betting. As she doesn't, and Casiola checks the turn as well, we can see two things from this situation. A, Anomalisia doesn't have a very strong hand. She may be checking back an ace for deception, but most likely she just has maybe a king, or tens, or a complete airball which she's just decided to close down on. Casiola, on the other hand, being in the small blind, her range should be something along the lines of a pocket pair, suited connectors, ace rag, or king jack, something like that, which she's just decided to see a flop with. She definitely doesn't have ace king, because she would have 3-bet pre-flop, and she doesn't have kings, aces, or anything like that. She doesn't have deuces, she doesn't have nines, because she would have let out on the turn. So we can really count her out for having anything on that flop, on that board whatsoever. So the only player we need to worry about is Anomalisia. Seeing as we've said that we don't think she's going to have an ace here, because she would have c-bet the flop with it, we think I think she might have just a kind of a premium, a non-premium hand like tens, or maybe she might king 10 or something like that. Something that she's not going to be too happy about continuing with, which is why she checked back the flop to keep the pot small. So I decided to lead out, and the plan here is with my tight aggressive style is to just bet and double barrel like we did earlier on with the ace-3. So we'll resume the playing out, and we'll see what happens. She calls. Now, when she calls here, I'm not too worried because I figure she's going to call quite a lot, and I think maybe hearts are in her range as well, which is why she called. So that's not a great river for us. I don't think she has a spade draw. I actually put her on something like king 10 here. So I feel like another c-bet, a double barrel on the river here is going to get through a lot of the time, purely because she doesn't have enough to call me. I could have hit my flush draw, and my range is very, very wide. I could have king 9, ace deuce, ace 5, king 5, nines, king, two deuces. You know, I have a very wide range of hands, which would beat her, you know, king or jacks or something like that. So I think a double barrel here gets through. As it happens, it will get through, and we're going to move down to the table on the bottom left. Now here, Kruzner min raised under the gun, which I hate anyway. I 3-bet to 3.5, which is standard 3.5x raise in position, and she called. On the flop of Queen 4 deuce, she donk led out for 4. Now, it's very hard to put her on a hand, basically. She could have Queen, King, Ace Queen, you know, she could have a real profitable, strong hand, but there's no reason for her to actually lead out there, because she's just lowering the price of the pot if she has a big hand. She should be check raising to try and build the pot if she has a really good hand, or if she's got something like jacks or tens, she's still going to check so that she can keep the pot small and check call. So it's very strange for her to donk lead out like this. I would usually put her on something like ace king, ace jack, maybe tens or nines, something that she doesn't know what to do with, and she's just sort of betting for the hell of it to see where she is. I don't like this that at all. If you're going to be donk leading, which can be a very good play, you need to donk lead for a reason. And as we'll see, she doesn't really have a reason for it. Either way, on a queen 4 deuce, my eights are good a lot of the time here. But I don't want to just flat, because otherwise, you know, things like nines, tens, jacks are still going to beat me by showdown. And she could improve. She could improve her ace jack when she hits a jack or an ace on the turn or river, you know, something like that. So I go ahead and double barrel on the turn, which I think is, you know, I think it's good. It's tight aggressive. I'm committing almost half my stack, remaining stack now. So she can't be thinking about pulling off a bluff. She can't be like check jamming ace king here, purely because she has no fold equity. I'm going to be calling, well, she thinks I'm going to be calling all of the time. This is great as a tight aggressive player, because people have to put you on a hand, and my hand is fairly narrow there. I'm rarely bluffing. Therefore, she can't really call, and she can't, well, unless she's got a hand and she can't raise. If she obviously called, I'm probably just going to shut down on the river because she has a hand that she wants to continue with. So I'll close down. Things like that, you just need to think through. Raising is usually always better than calling, so, you know, give it a go.